Okay, I think for time's sake, we're going to get started, and then if anyone joins us, they can just jump right in. So, hi, everyone. Welcome to the Schulich School of Engineering's event series, Engineering for Humanity. Tonight, we'll be uncovering some common myths and misconceptions in engineering. My name is Allison Barrett, and I am tuning in from Calgary, Alberta, where we're having a very beautiful fall day. I am the diversity specialist at the Schulich School of Engineering at the University of Calgary, and I'm really excited to connect with all of you virtually tonight. Before we get started, I just want to take this opportunity to acknowledge the traditional territories of the people of the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta. The city of Calgary is also home to Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. Before I turn it over to Dr. Januszkiewicz, I just had a few housekeeping comments for everyone who's joining. So we have a really fabulous panel joining us this evening, whom I will introduce to you shortly. After the panel, we'll try to leave some time for a participant Q&A, but if at any time you do have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. We'll either answer the questions directly in the chat or we might read them aloud as well. If anyone would like to turn on their microphone and ask the question aloud, that would be allowed as well. We would encourage that for all of you. And please note that we are recording this session for anyone who isn't available to attend. So now I would like to introduce Dr. Svetlana Januszkiewicz.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming to this event. We hope that more people will join a bit later. So this event is brought to you by Schulich School of Engineering, and I work at Schulich School of Engineering. I'm a professor in the Department of Electrical and Software Engineering. It's one of our 5 departments, and we have also multiple other programs. So the today event is organized and by our Office of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, and we have a dedicated panelists who are either our current students or our alumni or engineers who belong to the community related to Schulich School of Engineering. So they all will be doing their best tonight to answer your question about engineering overall, about study at Schulich School of Engineering at the University of Calgary, and about engineering profession and the role of engineers in society. So I think it's good to introduce our panelists right now.
So before I get started with our panelists, I did just want to have a few comments about the Schulich School of Engineering that I wanted to introduce to everyone. So we're really happy that you're attending our event tonight. This is part of a larger event series, Engineering for Humanity. So if you enjoyed tonight and you want to learn about some of our other topics, please check out this website down below. You can also scan this QR code in the corner here to be directed right to the event listing page. We also have our University of Calgary open house coming up soon. So if you are starting to think about where you want to go to university, I would highly encourage you to check out the open house. It's on Saturday, October 2nd, between 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Mountain Time. And there's a few great sessions being put on by engineering as well as the other faculties as well. And this year it will all be virtual due to COVID. We also have a UConnect program. So if you are interested in learning more about life as an engineering student, you can join our UConnect program and you'll be matched with one of our current engineering undergraduate students so they can let you know a little bit more about student life at the Schulich School of Engineering. They can help you out with some awards and scholarships and let you know about their internship or travel abroad opportunities. It's a really cool program just to learn a bit more about life as a university student. We also have some Schulich Ignite programs coming up in October. So if you are interested in learning about computer coding, I would highly recommend you check out Schulich Ignite. They offer 8-week free programming courses for high school students, and they do have 2 different streams. So if you are a beginner to coding, they have a program for you, but if you're a bit more experienced with coding and want a bit more of a challenge, they also have a stream for you as well. So again, The link at the bottom should have links to all of these events and programs, or if you scan the QR code in the corner there. I also just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of a new pathway to engineering. So a few years ago now, the Schulich School of Engineering launched the Bioengineering Summer Institute. So this is a program for students who are very passionate about biology, but and want to pursue engineering, but do not have the physics requirement. So if you apply through this pathway, you'll participate in a 4-week program in August, where you'll learn the physics fundamentals that you need for engineering, but through a biology lens. It's a really hands-on learning experience, and it's a really great way to kind of connect with students before you start your first year as well. After you complete this course, you just start your traditional first year of engineering. And yeah, it's a really cool program. I also want to point out some of the scholarship opportunities, just because these deadlines do come up faster than you think. So at U of C, the engineering program, we offer about $4.5 million worth of student awards every year. So there's lots of opportunities to earn scholarships and awards for your studies. And one that I particularly want to highlight was our Diversity Champions in Engineering Award. So this is a $4,000 entrance award available to any student who's applying to engineering and who accepts their admissions offer. And last year, just to give you some reference, we awarded 61 of these awards. So I would highly encourage everyone in attending to apply for this Diversity Champion in Engineering Award. And again, I just have a QR code in the corner there with a link to all these awards pages. Here's some key dates just to be aware of if you are in grade 12 and you are thinking about applying to university. So on October 1st, applications will officially open. December 1st is when those prestige awards that I was mentioning on my previous slide, when those applications are due. And make sure you apply by March 1st. If you do have any questions, you can always reach out to the Schulich School of Engineering at discoverengineering@ucalgary.ca. So now I would love to get into our panel. So we've got 4 awesome panelists joining us today. I'm not sure if Camilla is joining us yet. So we might have to get started with our 3 awesome panelists for now. So we have, first of all, we have Julia Bassett here. So Julia is a project engineer at Jensen Hughes with a Bachelor of Science degree in mechanical engineering. Julia currently works in fire and life safety engineering and has previous experience with forensics engineering, management consulting, and integrity engineering. Outside of work, Julia also enjoys music, traveling, and getting out to the mountains. Our next panelist, we have Dr. Emily Marasco. Emily is an instructor of software engineering at the Schulich School of Engineering. Her pedagogical research and teaching interests are in the areas of innovation and learning engineering, including the use of machine learning, gamification, blended learning, and entrepreneurial thinking as tools for enhancing creativity within software and computer engineering. Dr. Marasco is active as a science communicator and outreach speaker in local education community, and she was most recently recognized as one of Calgary's 2019 Top 40 Under 40. For our next panelist, we have Carolyn DeWood. Carolyn is a mechanical engineering student who is currently on a 16-month internship at TC Energy before her final year of studies. Caroline is very involved in co-curricular activities, including ANOVA, which is a student team that uses biomimicry for sustainable engineering design and promotes its principles to young students and adult audiences alike. Additionally, Caroline is involved with Go Baby Go, which designs power mobility devices for toddlers with mobility disabilities, as well as retrofits electric ride-on toy cars for their independence and development. Carolyn also started an NPO that promotes wellness of senior citizens through the arts. So I'm very excited to get started with our panel today. So I'm just going to stop sharing here. and I think we can get right into our discussion. So I thought we could start off with having our panelists kind of explain their pathway to engineering and maybe something that surprised them once they got into engineering. So whether that was in their studies or working as an engineer. And Emily, I'm going to put you on the spot first.
All right, welcome everyone. So, my path to engineering was actually a little bit different in that when I went into engineering, I didn't even really know what an engineer did. I wasn't sure I wanted to be an engineer. And when I started my first year of engineering classes, I still wasn't sure it was the right path for me. I actually wanted to go to law school. I was really interested in intellectual property law, and I thought engineering would be a good stepping stone for that. And it is. I highly recommend that. But when I was in first year engineering, I had a professor who got up in first year design and started to play the French horn. And he was talking about how different instruments have a different form versus function. And he was tying it all back to music. And I actually play the oboe, and I was also minoring in music at university. And I didn't know that music and engineering were tied together. And I found out that he had a whole career as a professional musician with the Calgary Philharmonic Orchestra before he came back to become a mechanical engineer. So I did some research work with him, and I got involved with music and engineering. And that is what actually started me on the career path to staying in engineering and pursuing engineering. It was because I discovered that I could mix my passion for music with my love of programming and computer engineering. And that's ultimately why I went into research and academia.
Thanks so much, Emily. Julia, would you like to go next?
Sure. I think I have a much more traditional pathway into engineering. I went to high school at Sir Winston Churchill here in Calgary, and I kind of knew that I wanted to be in engineering. So I applied like U of A, U of C, UBC, various engineering programs. I'm not sure if the U of C still does an early admission program, but I had applied through that and kind of been accepted while I was still in high school, and then started first year engineering kind of right after university. I took 5 years to do my degree with a similar internship program to what Carolyn's doing right now. So I did 16 months at TransCanada, or TC Energy, I guess they are now. And then I started kind of after graduation as a forensic engineer. And so I think that's the one thing that really surprised me in what engineering can allow you to do as a career path. I thought that forensic engineering was for chemists or scientists or people with criminal type backgrounds. And I didn't really realize that you could do something like that as an engineer. So that's where I started out, and I really enjoyed doing that.
Thanks, Julia. Yeah, I'd never heard of forensic engineering until meeting you. So very cool. Carolyn, can you go next?
For sure. Hi, everyone. I had a bit of a traditional path as well, but a different kind. I was kind of the typical child who took everything apart to make new things and was really into the maths and sciences. So it was kind of obvious to all my teachers and family growing up. And I really identified with everything that I saw in engineering careers. And I grew up in Egypt, so I was around a lot of very impressive examples of modern and historical examples of engineering. So it definitely sounded very appealing to me. And as I grew up, I tried to explore the different types of it, and I found myself interested in pretty much all of it. So mechanical engineering was a good path for me. You get to learn a little bit of everything. And yeah, I was also obsessed with motion and moving parts. So like a good path, but I stuck to it since I was a kid. I just knew that was my path and kept trying to learn what discipline I should go into. And then I end up here. And yeah, one thing that surprised me, kind of similar to what Julia said, is just like the breadth of engineering. The amount of people that you meet in your degree who do things that are so different from each other, the fact that they're all in the same profession is so wild. And I've never seen that in any other profession. And it surprised me every day. I mean, Julia worked in forensic engineering, but also has done such different stuff in this is just one person's career. So it's it's amazing. You can really do anything. It feels infinite these days, what you can do with engineering.
Thanks so much. And we have our fourth panelist joining us, Camilla. So let's give Camilla a brief introduction and then I'll allow her to answer that question as well. So Camilla is a third-year mechanical engineering student minoring in digital engineering. Camilla likes to stay heavily involved in the community and currently holds executive positions in the Engineering Student Society, Re-Electric Car Team, and the FSAE team. So she was actually just at one of the Re-Electric events right before she tuned in with us. So she keeps very busy. She's also an avid outdoor enthusiast and has recently picked up sports climbing. So Camilla, the first question that we're going over is just what was your path to engineering and something that surprised you?
Yeah, so I guess I'm in my third year, so I haven't actually completed my full path of engineering. But honestly, leading up to engineering, I've always liked maths and sciences. But at the same time, I did like other school subjects. So at first, I was hesitant about engineering because I was like, oh, if it's just maths and sciences, I don't know how much I really want to do that for the rest of my life. I really like talking to people. I like interacting, and that's like, I would say, a big part of my, I guess, personality. And yeah, so that's kind of what discouraged me at first. But then I attended a few women in STEM events actually. And I got to see what engineering was more so like, and I got to see a lot of people interact with other people. I got to see a lot of teams. I got to see a lot of the extracurriculars that happens behind academics. And that really kind of got me super excited about engineering. And that's kind of why I went in, because I like problem solving. And I was able to see that all of my personal characteristics that I would like to implement in engineering, I could. It's like kind of like what you make of it. And so, yeah, that's kind of why I decided to pursue engineering in general. In terms of my career path, I joined as a little first year. Second year, I did some research. I worked this past summer. I did a little bit of an internship, and I also did some research. And yeah, I've just been super busy. I've kept up with a lot of clubs. We did just have an info night for a car team that converts cars into electric cars. So yeah, it's been super awesome for me so far, and I can't wait to see honestly what happens next. Something that surprised me was, like I said, it's not all maths and sciences. It's honestly what you make of it. So, you know, if you have other passions outside of engineering, it just surprised me that you can implement that into your engineering lifestyle, I guess, if that makes sense. You can pursue whatever you want, your hobbies outside of engineering, or even like implement it within clubs that you join or whatever you do. And you can always find people that are like you as well. It's not just you, and you're not always just the outsider if you are a little bit different. Yeah, because that's something that I thought about, and I thought, I thought that it was just all these like know-it-alls. I thought I was not smart enough, but it really turned out different than that. And yeah, that's what I would say about my journey so far.
Thanks so much, Camilla. So it's really clear from all of your responses that engineering is a really diverse field. So this kind of leads me into my first engineering myth that I would like us to discuss. So a common misconception that I hear a lot at these kinds of events is that engineers only really work in oil and gas. So I was wondering if we could kind of talk about that myth a little bit. Maybe if our panelists could discuss a bit more about what engineers like do in their day-to-day job. Also, I'd love to know if all engineers end up working as engineers when they get into the professional world. So Julia, can I start with you for this one?
Sure. So there's a couple layers of that question. So the first one that I'm going to answer is, do engineers usually end up working in oil and gas? And I would say not always. You can. Calgary is certainly built around an oil and gas kind of industry, but that is changing. I think the scope of what you can do in industry, and even, as a potentially professor or something like that, is very wide ranging. I think the next kind of aspect of that was, do you have to keep working as an engineer, and what are kind of the things that engineers typically do? And so for that question, no, you don't have to keep working as an engineer after graduation is the simplest answer. You can certainly. But I think it opens you up to a ton of different career options. When I first graduated, I actually ended up in management consulting to start with. So that isn't engineering, that's actually a business or more business focused. Having an engineering background does help because you have this ability to solve problems, just kind of in a different way than a business person might learn. So my first kind of career path right outside of engineering wasn't actually in engineering. So I think you can kind of go back and forth. You can stay in one. You can really explore what there is to offer. And as an engineer, kind of my typical day-to-day activities are not very typical. There is report writing. There's phone calls with clients, stuff that is, maybe like a day-to-day type of thing, but also every day is very, very different. I can't say that I do the same thing every single day. Every project that I work on is different. Even when they're similar, they're never quite the same. So I would say that on a day-to-day basis, there's a lot of variety in the work that I do, even though some of the overall motions might be a little bit repetitive. Things are very varied, I guess.
Great, thank you. And so, Emily, I know that you said in your introduction how at first you were considering law school. So I think, and now you're working as a faculty member at the Schulich School of Engineering. So you're kind of going back to like teaching engineering. So can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, and you know what? I'll give you some examples of some of my colleagues and what they've done throughout the years, because the majority of them that I've seen go through, especially on the tech side, do not work in oil and gas, and still have great thriving careers in Calgary. One of them actually had a real interest in biomed. He pursued chemical engineering and biomedical as a specialization, and he went on to med school and is now a doctor. And with his knowledge of both medicine and engineering, he actually works, and I hope I'm saying this correctly because it's very technical, he actually works on improving the way we do radiographs and x-rays and different imaging on the human body. And that's something that really allows him to take that engineering knowledge and the medical knowledge and combine it. My husband is also an engineer. He's an electrical engineer, and he works in construction consulting. So he does a lot of really creative design work around buildings, runways, even like hospitals, schools, all sorts of different construction projects where we need to consider the electrical needs. That could be lighting, that could be security, that could be fire alarm systems, all those kinds of things. We need to think about how do we get electricity to places, how do we get light to places? So he works with architects a lot. He'll even work with public artists. There's lots of different people who make up that team. And, he gets to do a little bit of everything. He's doing the design work, he's doing technical calculations, but he's also doing presenting and writing and networking with people, which is really interesting. In my own career, some of the different things I've worked on is I've worked on urban noise control. So working on an application that would help identify different noise nuisances in the city. So you hear some sort of a low frequency noise, you're not sure where it's coming from. There are acoustical engineers who will come out and try to identify where the sound is coming from, how we can get rid of it, or how we can improve the sound dampening around it. Another thing I did was work for a robotics company. And this is where I did a little bit of, when you were saying, do engineers have to work as engineers? For actually a little bit, I hosted an educational YouTube series on how we teach coding and robotics to specifically students and teachers. So that was something that, I'm not stamping engineering drawings, but my engineering knowledge is what allowed me to be an effective communicator and an effective educator, as well as my knowledge of programming and embedded systems with robotics. So you can see that engineering skills are going to be applicable to so many different fields, even if it's not what we consider or what we think in our minds is a stereotypical engineering role. Engineers at their core are designers and problem solvers. So if you are designing and problem solving while applying your math and your science and your technical skills, then there is a space for you within the engineering world.
Thanks, Emily. So I'm going to go into our next engineering myth. So can engineering students pursue hobbies in arts or explore subjects outside of maths and sciences as an engineer? So Carolyn, can you start us off with this one?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I can start off on the personal side. In terms of classes, exploring other subjects through classes, a lot of us tend to do that through our option classes, or a lot of people take minors or they do extracurriculars related to the subjects that they want to explore outside of engineering. So for me, I know I took like an Asian religions class and I took a gender studies class that pertains to women in STEM. But these were two of my all-time favorite classes I've ever taken, and it's a very nice complement to your engineering classes. It's a nice way to get your brain working in different ways in the same semester. And yeah, but a lot of my friends are interested in so many different things. A lot of them are artists before they are engineering students, and their art is what keeps them sane. It's what keeps them and helps them through their degree. And at the same time, a lot of us are interested in business. I know a lot of my friends are interested in finance and business, and we all supported each other in our learning journey. So you learn financial literacy and all that, which is, it's very nice to have that network. But other than that, I'd say extracurriculars are an amazing way to explore your hobbies, whether they be in the arts or other subjects. And at Schulich, we have something called the Schulich Maker Multiplex. And we've got these studios or these rooms that are full of instruments and equipment for recording music, editing music. We've got a textiles room if you're into, sewing and printing things on fabric, embroidery. We've got a ton, and you can use it for engineering applications and projects like wearable tech, for example, with the textiles room. Or you could just use them to, explore your own hobbies and see where that intersects with engineering. It's really up to you. It's free reign, and they're there for a reason. But yeah, we tend to see that they complement engineering pretty well. We also have a lot of clubs like Schulich Soundstage for, again, people who are interested in music, and we've got things like unconventional engineers for engineering students who do not want to become, engineers. There's a lot to explore, and clubs, you're not limited to Schulich clubs. I would recommend doing something like way outside of Schulich if you're interested. It's just a great way to be able to explore that while still being in university and focused on your studies.
Right. Oh no.
I think you're muted, Ali.
It won't let me unmute.
You got it. It's working. Emily, you want to take that one in the meantime?
Sure. Ali, why don't I go ahead and add on to that one? So the question was about, can engineering students pursue hobbies outside of engineering? And I would actually say that it's really crucial to have some sort of hobbies or interests outside of your technical skills, because engineers, the whole goal of engineers is to design something that is going to improve society. We design and solve problems for the betterment of society. And the more that you take an active role in society in some sort of element other than engineering, it gives you different context that you can bring then your technical skills to. So for example, I mentioned that I was into music. My main instrument is the oboe. And some of the research work I did as an undergraduate student was analyzing how we can improve the tone quality of student musicians to help them sound more like professionals on their instrument. So by show of hands or by typing in the chat, how many of you play a musical instrument or sing or have some sort of musical tie, enjoy listening to music? Good. I see a couple of hands, a couple of thumbs up, a couple chat. Good. So if you have any experience with band, for example, the way that a brand new grade 7 instrumentalist sounds compared to a grade 12 student is very different. And that's different from a Philharmonic orchestra player, for example. So we can actually take sound measurements. We can sample that sound and we can analyze it in the frequency domain. And then we can take a look at what's called a sound signature and how we see those different frequencies across the spectrum. And we can then use our music knowledge to say to the student, warm up your tone, take a deeper breath, tighten your embouchure. And it's actually the mix of the engineering and music skills that makes that more powerful. If you're a musician who doesn't understand the frequency spectrum, you're going to have a hard time understanding where the power is in the lower frequencies versus the higher frequencies. If you're an engineer who doesn't have any knowledge of the music side, then something like warm up your tone might not mean anything to you. A practicing musician knows what you're talking about if you say, change the color of your sound. That means something to a musician. Oh, now we've got you, Allie. There we go. That means something to a musician. It doesn't necessarily mean something to an engineer. So having those two different viewpoints actually makes you more powerful as an engineer and as a problem solver, because you can bring your two sides of your passion to solving that problem. Another example I see is a friend of mine is actually a former Olympian who became a mechanical engineer. And the way she approaches problems is very different. As an athlete, she has a different mindset. And that also then helps her identify problems that she can work on in sports that her mechanical engineering background can then solve for her. So not only does she know different problems she can solve, but the way she approaches engineering is with an athlete's mindset, which is a little bit different and really interesting to see.
I don't know if anyone can hear me. My Zoom is not working.
We can hear you.
Okay, I can't see anyone now, so I'm just gonna keep going. Thank you very much, Emily. So I think for our next engineering myth, especially because we have an entirely women in engineering panel, I would like to discuss how it is to be a woman in engineering. So is it hard to succeed as a woman in engineering? And what do you have any messages for any girls in the audience today? And I think we will start with Camilla for this question. Oh, no.
So sorry, it's super hard to find like a quiet place in university. I'm like, after I finished the info night, I was in the Eng lounge and then I walked into the ESS office because I thought that was going to be quiet. And then people in the ESS from ESS came in. So now I'm back in the Eng lounge. But anyways, I would say, sorry, could you repeat the last part of the question? I was like running.
Oh, no worries. So I was just wondering if you had, if you could explain a little bit about being a woman in engineering, and if you had any advice for any girls in the audience or students from
Yeah.
any underrepresented group.
For sure. So I think personally, being a woman in engineering, the biggest thing was just the fact that it was the male to female ratio for me was mostly like, I would feel sometimes like imposter syndrome, I guess. That's like the biggest thing that came for me. So for example, in my first year, I joined the FSAE, which is a Formula One sports kind of car team, racing team. And I joined the software team. And surprisingly, I was the only girl in the entire software team. And I was like, man, every time we had meetings, you know, there would be like small comments, maybe like, oh, hey guys, oh, and girl, or something like along those lines, where you kind of constantly felt like you knew that you were the only girl, or that you were like, I guess, a slightly different. So sometimes that would give me some imposter syndrome. But then at the end of the day, what I found was it actually, sometimes it could like I said in that team, I kind of like sometimes had some imposter syndrome, but at the end of the day, if you're confident enough in your skills, in yourself, and I guess if you're confident enough in yourself, I think it's okay to be in those situations. Sometimes it's very tough to escape those types of situations, and that's why it's so important that we advocate towards increasing the female to male ratio in engineering and STEM related fields, because a lot of people think that it's only for males, and it's a super male profession. And historically, that's something that has been a thing for a while now. And it's wrong, of course, because it's been proven time and time again, like we're here all with a fully female panel, that women do belong in engineering, women belong in STEM, and you see so many women succeeding, so many women in power. And I think that's super important for aspiring female engineers to see. I know personally for me, I really look up to, I know my Eng 200, my very first engineering class, the professor was a Muslim female. And although that might not seem like much, personally, I'm actually Muslim myself, and you also don't see, like, I was just super inspired, I guess, to see a woman in power in a few underrepresented categories, I would say. And I actually had the same conversation with a friend where we were super inspired by that, and we went to go talk to the professor, and we were like, it's so nice to see this, because sometimes it can get overwhelming. Sometimes you just feel like you don't belong. And then at the end of the day, you kind of have to look at those small factors and kind of advocate, I guess. That's why, so I took part in the Women in Science and Engineering Club. And I started the Diversity Advocacy Committee, which is actually an extension of the Engineering Student Society. And it also has a section that's related to kind of gender and sexuality. And it's kind of directed towards empowering women. And there are so many societies out there and so many clubs that direct themselves towards empowering women. And I think that's super important. I think advice that I would give to women entering engineering or thinking about engineering is, I would not be discouraged by thinking that this is a male dominated profession or anything like that, because you are able to succeed just as much as any male, and you can make it further than any male if you wanted to. I think anything is possible, honestly. And we are slowly getting up the female to male ratio up in engineering and STEM in general. And this is 2021. So at this point, I think the biggest advice would be to not let yourself be discouraged by anything, that you can 100% go wherever you want to go. And yeah, I guess just enjoy it.
Thanks so much, Camilla. I think I love everything you said there. And I think you can do a little plug for your Diversity Advocacy Committee Instagram. I think it's such a great page where you're really showcasing some like important problems in diversity around the world and in engineering.
Yeah, sure. So if you guys want to take a look at the Instagram of the Diversity Advocacy Committee, it's DAC, so DAC _U Calgary. That's the Instagram. And it has so basically this committee has a whole bunch of different portfolios, not just gender and sexuality, just because there's so many underrepresented areas of diversity, not just gender and sexuality. I do see that like a lot of the time we do focus on gender and sexuality in engineering specifically, but at the same time, there's also a lot of other areas of diversity that are also not being advocated for. So if you guys check that out, there are a whole bunch of different portfolios. There's a socioeconomic portfolio, there's a neurodiversity portfolio, mental health, neurosexuality, gender and sexuality. There's like 12. There's pretty much 12. And you could check them out. We do try hard to educate people. That's the main purpose of the Instagram. And that's why if you see, it's really presented in a way to educate people and be able to educate them in a super, I guess, visually appealing way, because sometimes if things are too cluttered, things are overwhelming, people don't want to learn. And that's why we put a lot of time into our social media. So if you did want to take a look, please do. It does have some good information in there. Like, I'm consistently surprised by some of the things that I learned by the people on the committee and the posts that we put out. There's always stuff to learn, and there's so many different portfolios. So yeah, I would highly recommend that you guys check that out.
Great, thanks so much, Camilla. Julia, did you have anything that you want to add to that as a woman working in engineering now?
Yeah, just really quickly, I think the simple answer is, as a woman, it's not hard to succeed as an engineer. It's what you put into it. But I will say that, you know, the experience of a female engineer is going to be different than a male engineer, but that's going to be the same as any sort of minority in any industry, whether it's female or person of color or whatever it is that separates you from the majority of people will have a different experience. So my advice to that would be to find a mentor, whether it's a female or male or whatever, someone who will support you and listen to you when you are having these issues where you think that, you know, I'm not getting ahead because I'm a female, or I'm not getting ahead for whatever reason it might be, or I'm struggling because of whatever issue it is. Having a mentor that you can talk to and who has maybe been in your shoes or who can empathize with where you're at is very, very important.
Thanks so much, Julia. So I'm going to move on to our next engineering myth. So why is being creative and forward-thinking useful as an engineer? Was there any project that you worked on where creativity was advantageous? So Emily, I know creativity is one of your big topics. So I'll get you to start us off here.
Sure. I'm going to start with the first part of that myth, which is basically, you know, do engineers have to be creative? Why do engineers have to be creative? So creativity is one of my research fields, specifically creativity in engineering. So let's talk specifically about tech for a second. There's something called Moore's Law, which basically is this prediction that as we try to make our computers faster and smarter, we're doing that by shrinking the size of the components that go onto the computer chips. And we've been doing this since the 60s. We had these big transistors and we're slowly shrinking them so we can fit more of them on a computer chip to make our computers smaller and faster and smarter. Unfortunately, Moore's Law says that eventually we can't make the components any smaller. They're going to be as small as they physically possibly can before we start breaking the laws of physics. And we're reaching that point. So now Intel is testing chips that are in the nanoparticle ranges. We're talking teeny, teeny, tiny little transistors and little chips. So as engineers, if we want to make our technology smarter and faster and more powerful, we can't keep going the way we have. We can't just keep shrinking the size of the components. So in software, electrical, and computer engineering, there's a real push right now to try to think of creative, new, and different ways to keep moving our technology forward. Otherwise, we're going to stall in our computer and our technology development. So some of the things we see are quantum computing, biological wearables. There's a really cool hypothetical prototype that some people show where your screen is now just on your arm. Like you would put your phone as a bracelet and the screen would be projected across your skin, and you would just type on your arm and there would be a proximity sensor that would know roughly where you were touching. And so then that would be like you were touching your screen and so on and so forth. So can we start to integrate some of these other ideas into our solutions? And what would that look like? To do that, that means the students who are coming into engineering now are going to graduate into a world where we're trying to come up with new ways of improving existing technology so we can push it further. And that means we need creativity. We need interdisciplinary thinking. You need that knowledge of your music, your sports, your biology, your physics, whatever it is. And you need to integrate that with your math and science skills in engineering so that you can come out with these cross-disciplinary solutions that are going to push us forward. If you take a look at the grand challenges that were identified a couple of years ago by the National Academy of Engineering in the States, these grand challenges, I think there's 12 or 14 of them. They are some of the largest grand challenges I've ever seen. One of these grand challenges for the next century of engineering is to reverse engineer the brain. That is not a small task, okay? So we need to work on that one. That's a big one. Things like clean drinking water are still a huge priority. That's one of the grand challenges. AI and technology, the ethics of robotics, all those kinds of things are being tied together. So we need creativity and innovation to move forward in some of those fields because it's a pretty big ask.
Thanks so much, Emily. I always love what you have to say about creativity and engineering. Carolyn, would you like to take a go at this engineering myth as well?
Sure. I mean, in general terms, I'm sure everyone's heard this a million times or even just a few times today, but engineering is problem solving, and without creativity, it gets really difficult. And creativity is what makes you do things differently than people around you and everybody who's tried to do this before you. And it drives innovation. And people who kind of separate creativity from STEM, I don't think that works. I think we really don't get anywhere with that. And yeah, if you're in engineering, you develop your creativity. And if you don't identify as a creative person already, but creative person, you absolutely belong here too. And it's essential. Creativity is very important. And in my personal projects, I'd say in Go Baby Go, when we're trying to retrofit an electric ride-on toy car for each specific kid and their specific mobility and accessibility needs, that requires creativity. You can't do things by the book. You're doing things that haven't really been done before, especially at a low cost, because there is a gap in the market. Or with ANOVA, when we're using biomimicry, when our teams look at bacteria and figure out how to use that as inspiration to make a green methane to methanol conversion device, or make a pretty low carbon pyrolysis chamber by looking at a fish's eye and its optic mechanism, that all takes creativity, and it helps us every day in engineering, even in our small projects in our classes. It's very important.
Thanks so much. And kind of, I think along the lines of creativity and what Carolyn was explaining with Go Baby Go, along with creativity, engineering involves a lot of teamwork. So you're not the only one who has to kind of come up with these problems. You work with other people to come up with the best engineering solutions. So I'm going to move on to my next engineering myth. So will you have no social life if you choose to study engineering? How manageable is the workload? Do you have a good work-life balance? And Carolyn, I'm going to shoot this one over to you again.
All right. Okay. This is a big question. It's an important one. And not to scare anybody, I wouldn't say that it is inherently manageable. I'd say that you have to be very deliberate about making it manageable. You have to figure out your own priorities, and based on that, you can choose how you want to tackle your degree. And it is a learning curve. It's one that, it's probably going to take some time to figure out where your priorities are and how you do this. And of course, having good time skills is important. But you also just need to know, how much do grades matter to you? How much does, your time with your loved ones matter to you? And you got to figure out how each thing places in your schedule. And you have to be very deliberate is the main word I'd put here. You have to be active and deliberate about your mental health and about your time, your social time. But Schulich is an incredible community. And in my experience, and I think most people agree, it kind of comes in with a built-in social life, because you have to work with others. You have to collaborate with others to get through your degree. And you're going to have a very special bond with other students at Schulich. It's something, and we're all so supportive of each other because you really have to. And there isn't that same, tough competitive spirit that you sometimes hear about in other degrees. It's more, we all kind of rely on each other to get through it. And engineers work hard and play hard, however play looks like for you and in your life, but it's very important. And I'd say it's imperative to have a good work-life balance to enjoy your degree. And it's definitely doable. You just have to decide that you want to do it. And yeah, I definitely say you gotta put the time and effort into figuring out how you want to do that, but it's absolutely doable. Just be deliberate.
Thanks so much. I think that was really well put. I'm also going to give this question to Camilla to see what your perspective is.
Yeah, so I think everything that Carolyn said was like super accurate. I would 100% say that the workload is manageable. It's personally, I've found it's just a matter of priorities and time management. I think with a growing workload, you get better at different skills, right? So if you do have a lot of classes and you have other priorities to balance outside of that, you kind of adapt. You learn as you go. There will be times where it's very challenging. You might do poorly in any aspect. So let's say you're super struggling with your 5 or 6 classes. But then outside of that, you have to do you play a sport or you do something else, and there sometimes you just can't find that balance. That's kind of imperative when it's inherent when you're trying to get good at something, because you will start off being bad at it, and there will be failures that come from that, and with those failures you will learn. I am speaking from personal experience. If you're interested in a lot of extracurriculars, if you're interested in a lot of stuff outside of academics, it 100% is doable. You just have to try. I would say 100% try, because it's so much better to try and to learn than to think that, oh, engineering is too hard, I don't have any time outside of engineering, I can't. Then I guess you only have the academics. But yeah, like I said, it's really what you make of it. I would not say that. I would say that engineers definitely have a social life, depending on who you talk to, hopefully. But yeah, you do have a social life, even if you don't talk to too many people outside of engineering. Like Carolyn said, the friends that you make within Schulich are a social life in itself. Even if it is just to text people and ask about homework questions, that's totally fine. But yeah, like I said, I think the main message is it 100% is manageable. If you are struggling with balancing things, I think it's like about building the skills in order to be able to balance whatever you would like to have in your life. So if sports is important to you, you should figure out a time to do that. If it is dropping from a super competitive sport into a recreational league, maybe an intramural sport, that's also compromises. Compromises have to be made. And it is a part of, I guess it is just a part of life, and it's just a few lessons that come along with maintaining a life within engineering, I would say.
Thanks so much. I think that was also really well said. And so I do have one final engineering myth that I just wanted to discuss, because I know I get a lot of questions from prospective students about this. And this will be for Julia. So do you have to have a high GPA in order to succeed as an engineer?
Short answer, no. You have to have a GPA that will get you through your degree. But once you graduate, you have your degree in engineering. If you want to kind of continue on with a master's program or continue on with more school, it might be more important to have a higher GPA if that's going to get you into some specific program. There are certain jobs that might look at a GPA coming out of school. So if those are kind of things that you're looking to do following your graduation, then yeah, your GPA might, your higher GPA might come in handy there. But for myself, I prioritized kind of doing the ESS kind of things, joining student societies. I was on 3 different councils in my 3rd year. Someone told me that Ds get degrees. That's not true anymore. So that's really bad advice. But for my 3rd year, essentially, I scraped by, barely passing my classes, but I made it through. I passed 3rd year, and then I was in 4th year and I graduated. So I think, again, as the other 2 ladies have said, it really depends on your priorities. Obviously, you do need to pass your courses in order to get a degree. Is it the end all be all? No. And just on that note, Ali, I do need to drop off at 7:30. So if I disappear, that's why.
Sounds good. Yeah, I know we get a lot of students who I think are so used to being at like the very top of their classes, and then get a little stressed if they don't make the A+ in every single course. And so really my purpose of that question is just making sure everyone focuses more on their mental health and wellness versus trying to just get a straight A+ in everything. And so we do have a few more minutes remaining. So I would love if anyone in our audience has any questions for the panelists. I am having some technical issues, so for some reason I cannot see the Zoom at all. So I'm glad you can see me. So if anyone does have a question, if one of our panelists or if Dr. Yanushkovich could read the question aloud, I would really appreciate that.
So we do have two questions in the chat. Sorry, Dr. Yanishkovich, do you want to address maybe the bioengineering?
Okay, sure. Yeah, there was a question. Could you please talk about the new bioengineering program? Thanks. So we're making progress in establishing the separate department of biomedical engineering. If that's the question is about, but we already do have approved the biomedical engineering minor. So if you're taking some other course, some other major, you can have biomedical engineering minor. So bioengineering itself, it's a little bit different term, but we mentioned the Bioengineering Institute today that Alison explained in the very beginning, right? So we kind of sometimes combine this, but the correct degree name is Biomedical Engineering Program. And if you have more detailed question about that, that's actually, it's still you have time after you enter into the general engineering degree, you have to choose the specialization, or rather call any other your major and the minors after your first semester. So you will have time, but of course we would like you to maintain good grades and be the student in good standing. Okay. Did I answer your question?
So maybe I'll jump on this second question here. Do you have any comments or experiences toward the 5 years combined degree of engineering and business? So I don't specifically have any comments about the engineering and business, but I want to talk about combined degrees in general. So when I went through, like I said, I minored in music, which really enriched my engineering experience. And we now have so many minors, even within engineering, where you could take, some of the ladies here said they're taking a digital minor, or they're involved in another program. You can do a combined degree across various areas on campus. One of them is engineering and business. And if you're passionate about those two areas and you want to integrate them and you think it'll be helpful for your future career, then adding 1 year to your degree is nothing, right? Even if you want to go on an internship and you make it 6 years, that's okay. You'll find that taking your time now to really plan out what you want to do and take those experiences while you can is going to be more enriching for your career later on. I know when I started, the idea of doing 5 or 6 years seemed really long, but by the time I finished my 5th year with my minor, it had gone by so quickly, and I'm glad I didn't try to fit it all in a shorter amount of time. I'm glad I did take the time to do those different courses and different extracurriculars, because that really made a difference.
And I can talk about the structure for the bio or for the engineering business dual degree a bit more. So if you do decide to pursue that degree program, your first year would be all engineering courses. So at Schulich, we offer a Common Core first year. So all of our first year students take the same 10 courses. And then in the second semester is when you would apply for your engineering major program. And so then in your second year is when you'd start the business specific courses.
So there's just 2 other questions here. One is for Ali. Will we receive a copy of this webinar?
Yes, I will be sending out a recording of the webinar, and I'll include some slides with any links to anything that we discussed today.
And then another question, can I connect with you guys on LinkedIn? Absolutely. If you want to add me on LinkedIn, it's just Emily Marasco, spelt that way. I am always happy to expand my LinkedIn network. Go for it. And actually, I should say, if you don't have LinkedIn yet, I think that LinkedIn is a really nice tool to give you some visibility in a professional context. When employers are looking at your applications, even for summer jobs, they are doing a social media search. They are doing a Google search. So, you know, keeping your private social media away from your public social media is really important. So I personally keep my Twitter and my LinkedIn for professional contexts. I only use my Twitter if I'm at a conference, because often they have hashtags and we're trying to tweet out so people will attend our sessions and stuff like that. I'll use my LinkedIn to keep in touch with professional colleagues. And then my other social media is purely for, you know, close family and friends, share pictures of my baby, that kind of thing. So it is good to have that line. And if you want to start networking with people as you're planning out your future career, LinkedIn is a good way to go.
Thanks, Emily. That's some really good advice. So I will be conscious of our time. I know we're at just past 7:30. So if there are any final questions, you can please put them in the chat now, or you can let us know over the audio. But that is it in terms of our programming for the evening. I'm so happy that you joined us, and I hope that we may have changed some of your minds about these engineering myths. And a big thank you to our panelists. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you to our wonderful panelists. Thank you so much. Okay, night.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Okay, thank you, ladies. It's a bit less people than we expected, but